Hey everyone, it's Nurse Dani coming to you live with a special guest today, Marie Chase, who is a certified hypnobirthing practitioner. We've worked together in the past. I love her. She is the best person to talk to about this topic. And if you want to know more about hypnobirthing, stay tuned because you're going to learn a lot from her. So thanks so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
I've been looking forward to having this conversation. So tell us about hypnobirthing for anyone out there who doesn't know much about it. What is hypnobirthing?
So hypnobirthing is a birth preparation class, and it's based on the idea that if a mom is relaxed, that her body will function better in the birthing process. So we teach techniques to release fears, because fear is just kind of really ingrained in our society around birth, and especially if it's a first-time mom and they haven't been through it before. But even if you're experienced, sometimes there's a lot of fear in that. So we help teach them some visualization techniques to release these fears, but also breathing techniques and relaxation techniques to help them to be able to stay as relaxed as possible, because the body really does function better to birth if it's in a relaxed state. And it's actually designed not just to prepare moms, but it's designed for couples. A mom can do it on her own if she doesn't have a partner to attend with her, but usually it's for couples. So we empower dads to be able to know what to do to help support his sweetheart through the pregnancy. So that can be challenging, and then the birth process.
I watched thousands and thousands of deliveries. I wish I would have counted them all. And the dynamics between couples were so interesting to me. And I think this is fact, not just observation. But when dads were more involved, it seemed like mom was more successful because she had someone that someone could totally go to you and you could be their doula and love you. How could you not love you? But having that person that you trust with your whole heart and everything, helping you through it, it really makes it so you can bond through that experience. You're both going through it too. Mom's delivering the baby, but dad is witnessing all of that and seeing her go through it. So I think they should both be involved.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I think it's a little shocking to dads sometimes how much of a birth experience they have, because they, selflessly think, oh, it's just mom having this experience. But they go through their emotional experience. Totally. They get nervous. They have fears. And so we really acknowledge that a lot in hypnobirthing and help to empower them so that they're able to also prepare for the birth of their child.
Yeah, sure. So it sounds like these techniques aren't all only applicable to birth. It sounds like if you're learning how to relax, they're applicable to many different situations in life.
Absolutely. In fact, sometimes I wish I could call it a life skills class.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful time to learn these techniques because you're very focused. It's a set period of time. You have an opportunity to really practice them through the birth process. But I have lots of moms come back and say, wow, I'm just using all of my hypnobirthing breathing through being a mom. New moms. Being a new mom is pretty big change, lots of changes, being new parents. So,
if you're experiencing anxiety or anger, frustration, all of that, you could just draw on that and it can help calm you down.
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, so who can use this technique? Who is hypnobirthing good for?
Anybody that's interested in learning some really cool relaxation ways to help keep themselves calm and learning about the mind-body connection. So really, I think it's
the mind is a powerful thing. Do you think that this is kind of just like opening up people's eyes to how powerful that is?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And that's the thing that's fun. I just started a class last night, and I had a dad who's in marketing walk up after the class, and he said, I didn't know anything about hypnobirthing until you started talking, because he just was being a nice husband and showing up. And he goes, this is totally stuff I could use for my sales team. And I said, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, yes, it is. It's about the mind and how it impacts every aspect of our lives. And I think it's exciting because rather than just thinking birth is just this physical experience that I'm going to endure and go through, hypnobirthing opens it up to being connected with your body instead of afraid of it, really being able to work with it and seeing I do have these things that I can do to help myself and be empowered. I get excited about helping women feel empowered in their bodies, working with them.
So a lot of people listening may think, oh, I'm not interested in that because I'm planning on an epidural, so I don't need to worry about that. What would you say to that?
Well, we do get a lot of moms that are focused on having unmedicated birth that take hypnobirthing. Some of that comes from healthcare providers that have seen that hypnobirthing is the most successful if they have a mom choosing an unmedicated birth. So those are my referrals usually. So that's exciting to me. But I also like to introduce the idea that sometimes an epidural becomes part of your birth experience, and being able to work with your body all the way through that birth process is going to be positive. And if for some reason you have like a complication, we call them special circumstances in hypnobirthing, so they don't sound quite as scary. But if you have a complication that results in a surgical birth, that can be, very scary as well. And so these techniques help a mom to be able to stay calm and connected with her baby and connected with her partner, and then even heal more rapidly afterwards. I've had moms that have ended up with cesareans, and they're like, I totally used all of my hypnobirthing stuff all the way through, and they're so excited, and it helps them to feel, again, empowered in working with their body through whatever process the birth takes. Because they're all births.
Yes, they are. Exactly. A lot of people, and I don't like the term natural birth because it doesn't matter if your baby was born vaginally or by C-section, your baby was born.
That's right.
And that's the special thing.
Absolutely.
And I always told, when I would teach prenatal classes, I'd always tell everyone, it doesn't matter if you're going to get an epidural or not, you're going to experience pain. And you need to have some coping strategies because there will be some time that you'll have to endure pain before you get that epidural, the time when you're at home contracting until it's, while you're wondering if it's time to go to the hospital or not. That can be hours or days before you're actually in labor.
Absolutely.
The time when you're at the hospital waiting to find out if you're going to stay or, waiting to get to the point where you can get an epidural, you will experience pain. So I think it's important for everyone to have that expectation and to have some tools they can pull out of their tool belt and for their partners to be able to help them with. So I think it's good for everyone to learn that.
That's good. I think one of the greatest fears that partners have is, at least this is what I hear the guys saying, I just don't want to see her in pain. That's like their worst fear.
And they freeze up because they don't know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. So when we teach the physiology of birth to the couples, the men, I think they're so relieved to understand that, because in hypnobirthing, we actually do teach that pain is not necessarily an integral part of birth. I know it's a very provocative idea, but I experienced a birth that was not painful. I've attended births and asked afterwards, so how would you describe the experience you went through? And they're like, well, it's really intense, but I wouldn't really call any of it pain. So we don't promise that. But it can be, if you're able to get relaxed deeply enough and you work with your body well and the baby's in a really great position, you can have an experience that's almost euphoric. And so anyway, I like to throw that out. And I think that even just having that as a possibility really is exciting for most people to, both moms and dads to consider that that's even a possibility.
Yeah. So what are some misconceptions around hypnobirthing?
I think the word hypno, as in hypnosis, is probably the biggest barrier.
So when you talk about going into a deeply relaxed state, a lot of people think they're actually like being hypnotized, and that's usually associated with being controlled by someone.
Right. Well, and most people have only seen entertainment hypnosis, and it looks like those people are like being puppeted up in front or something, and
doing something against their will.
Yeah, being controlled. But that's actually not true. Hypnosis is just a state you go through naturally every day. They just named it. So we know about depths of sleep. So you have I don't know if you've heard these words like delta and theta depth of sleep, and then you cycle through these sleep cycles. Well, your brain goes through those different wave length states naturally, and that can also happen in a waking state, and does. So if you're exercising or doing anything really repetitive, your brain tends to relax. It's one of the benefits of exercise is this relaxed kind of just in the zone state that you go into. And that's the state we work toward for birth, because obviously a woman is not sleeping while she is having a baby. So we just educate moms about how to help empower that experience. Because really, that's where you would go. If a woman was not afraid of having a baby, like if you watch animals birthing, they all kind of look like they're just laying there in a zone. And that's what we would be doing if we didn't have this highly evolved brain of ours that has all these preconceived ideas and fears and things. So hypnobirthing helps to educate a mom about her body gives her techniques to help herself kind of relax into that place where the body is really designed to have babies. Because, we didn't have epidurals like hundreds of years ago, but women were having babies. So the body's actually designed to go into that relaxed state, but we just sort of fight it and take it out of that. So anyway, hypnosis is a natural state that you go through. And like automatic driving, have you ever been driving and you're thinking about something else and you pull into your driveway?
You wonder, how did I get here?
Yeah, and it was such a fast drive and it kind of freaks you out. That's a state of hypnosis. Any highly trained athlete that's, doing their sport or whatever, they're definitely in a state of hypnosis. And what I kind of like to liken it to is you have that muscle memory that's working. And in fact, we talk about, once you ride a bike, you never forget how to ride a bike. Well, when you're riding a bike, the first time you're thinking about every little pedal push. And it's hard, you fall over and you don't look very smooth in it. Then once you kind of get the hang of it, you're not thinking about every little pedal push. So you have the conscious mind that's in charge of like the analytical, logical part of it. And then you have the subconscious mind that picks that up and starts going into the flow of it and just the muscle memory. And so that's kind of where we want to move moms, is out of that analytical mind and help her move into we call it more of a primal state, tapping into the natural birthing instincts, the parts of her that just really know how to have a baby, that nobody's taught how to have a baby, but that she believe in it and go with it.
You're thinking about what your body's doing during the process. Is that right? Like what kinds of things do you teach people to think about?
A lot of it is, I think the term nowadays is mindfulness, kind of being in the moment, not predicting ahead of time what's going to happen. Letting go of muscles rather than tensing up. Because they're, especially first babies, and even, it doesn't matter, anytime you go through labor, there's kind of that, labor can be a very powerful experience, probably the most powerful experience most women have gone through. And it can feel a little overwhelming. So rather than resisting it, if they believe in it, they can just relax and go into it. Those are kind of a lot of the visuals we have, that we work with the body rather than resisting the body. And that just works better because it allows things to open, muscles, cervixes, those types of things to relax and open, let babies come down and be born.
Well, and the pain, fear, tension cycle is real. Yes. That is a real thing.
I bet you've seen that.
Oh, yeah. So you experience pain and then you tense up and you get more scared and then it hurts more. And so you have to find a way to get yourself out of that. So I'll just put it out there. One of my worst fears was going unmedicated with my kids. I'd seen way too many people go through it either by choice or not by choice because they just went too fast and it just seemed absolutely miserable. So by the time I had my kids, I was like, nope, I'm getting an epidural no matter what. Well, on my second, I ended up being one of those people where it just went too fast. And so I did get an epidural, but it kicked in like right before it was time to start pushing. And I was at work when I was laboring. So what better place for me to be at when I'm contracting than at work? So they just said, once you're 5, we'll break your water and you can have a baby. So I worked up to the point of being 5 centimeters, went and found my husband because he worked at the hospital too. We came back and, I was admitted and everything and came and broke my water and got my epidural right after. But man, it went so fast. I remember thinking like, all right, gear up. You are in for this. So you teach people how to do this all the time. You can do it. And that was empowering to me. I had to have some sort of motivation so that I wouldn't be afraid of it. And I think for me, it was selfish. I'm like, you can't be the stupid labor and delivery nurse. You can't do this, and so I just remember I was totally zoned and I'd never been to a hypnobirthing class. I'd only, heard from patients and doulas who'd talked about it. But I can relate to that just because I remember thinking about what was happening and how I needed to respond. And it helped because it was kind of like I wasn't like really like over myself, but I imagined watching myself and what was happening and how I was reacting to it and if it would be helpful or not. Like, I know we talked before about how nurses need to turn it off when they have a baby. Yes. We had that conversation. But for me, it was helpful because I thought if I was a nurse, what would I tell myself to do?
Sure.
And so from that perspective, I was telling myself, relax. Take a big, deep breath. You can do this. I was like encouraging myself.
That's wonderful.
And it was really, it was awesome. And then I didn't have to push the baby out without the epidural. It worked right. It started working right before I was pushing. But I really, really needed those tools. And I can't imagine not having known anything and having to cope with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be really, really hard.
And I mean, we run into difficult situations on a regular basis. It's nice to feel like you're not victimized by it, that you can be empowered and I have things I can do and move through it. And you do feel empowered afterwards. You're like, I did that. Yeah. It's a very exciting feeling and it gives you more confidence. I think it can be a real confidence builder to go through hard things no matter, what ends up happening. Exactly. Yeah. It's very powerful.
It really helped me as a nurse too, I think, because then I truly had empathy for people who were going through it, having gone through at least that portion.
That you understand myself. The power of it. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And having a positive attitude. I always told people, you have to be positive about this. Like you were saying, your body was made to do this. And even if things don't end up going exactly how you planned, you need to think of your baby. This is like the forward in your book of life with your kids. It's not the end of the book. It's the beginning.
Right, exactly.
A lot of people think that, after like labor is the end of the book,
Right.
It's the beginning. And so when people could have that mind shift and think about something else, like I said, I think the brain is so powerful. And one of my favorite graphics is pain receptors are taking all of the stimulation from the body up in the brain. And if you can just block that, so that you're thinking about something else, whatever that might be, distraction, focusing, breathing, it really helps so much. So hypnobirthing, I did see a lot of patients be successful with it just because they were able to, they'd practice. You got to practice, right?
You do.
You can't just decide the night before that I'm going to have an unmedicated delivery tomorrow. That's going to be like me deciding to run a marathon in the morning.
Exactly. That's the example I bring. I'm like, how many of you guys are going to sign up for the Ogden Marathon in May and not really worry about it till the night before? That doesn't really work. And the thing that's a little different is our bodies are designed to birth. I've actually seen a few women who have taken the class and they couldn't take the full class. I've just given them kind of an overview of skill sets and had a baby a couple days later and they did great. So it's not just about the drilling in of these ideas, but I think practicing the skills and getting them really settled into where it's almost like your nervous system learns that there's another way. Like, okay, so I'm going to feel this stress chemical releasing in my body, some cortisol or whatever. And this is what we're going to do instead of what I used to do, which is tighten up, tense up, freak out, whatever it is that used to be your habit. And so it kind of does. So that's where I see that the practice is helpful is we're kind of starting new habits of thought and literally helping our nervous system learn a new way. I've been teaching these classes for 15 years. I had my last baby using hypnobirthing, which was really an exciting experience for me. That's why I teach, actually. And so I've been practicing these techniques for 15 years. And I find myself using them all the time. And it's almost becoming automatic. Unless the stress level hits a certain level, and then I have to kind of okay, I can use my visualization for this. And I talk myself through it kind of like you were talking about as the nurse. But some of it does happen automatically, and it does eventually leave your nervous system kind of at a more chill place where you just don't overreact to as many things as I probably would have previously. So I think the repetition's really, really good. And it's exciting that the birth of my baby doesn't have to be the end of this experience. This is one that can continue on. I can use these techniques on and on. I haven't had any more babies since then, but I continue to use them. And I love them because they make quality of life better for me or anybody I get to teach. I love that part.
You should change your title to life coach. Just consider that. Okay, so how popular is this method? How many women use hypnobirthing?
It's actually pretty popular. It's grown in popularity in this area, and that's what I can speak about. My class that started last night has 9 couples in it, so that's a pretty big class. Yeah. And I consistently have between probably 7 and 12 couples in all my classes. And I think one of the reasons it's popular is because once a woman or a couple has a good experience. And I say couple because the dads talk to each other. We know you guys have those those discussions, there's the man discussions. But anyway, and so they a lot of them are referrals from other couples that have taken the class. The other reason it's picking up popularity, I believe, in this area is because the providers, the healthcare providers, midwives and OBs are seeing more success, so they are referring. I'd say about a third of my the women that are taking the class have been referred by providers. So in this area, it's picking up popularity. I think worldwide, it is most likely for the same reason. And it works pretty well. And people tend to talk to each other. And I think that women are looking for a more gentle experience for birth.
Yeah. When you were talking, a patient that I had a long time ago came to my mind. She had done, it wasn't hypnobirthing. I don't remember exactly what type of breathing and relaxation it was, but regardless, she was out of control. And she'd reached her max. I remember her because I felt so bad for her. She had, and you have to remember, like, especially on your first, when labor is so long, you may have been up for nights contracting prior to the point when you're actually in labor. You're emotionally, physically, just, you're so exhausted. And that affects your ability to cope too. So this poor girl had been 7 centimeters for 4 hours. And, she came in with her water broken, so she had to be induced. So she'd already been on Pitocin. She had done everything under the sun. We'd done everything under the sun to help her progress, and she wasn't. And I knew in her case, the reason why she wasn't progressing was because she was out of control. And so we've all seen how that can really affect a woman's ability to change because they're holding themselves back.
Yes.
And at that point, she just was not capable. We talk about couples and interaction. Her husband actually said to her, "When you can be a reasonable person, I will talk to you." And he went in the corner and sat with his arms folded. But to his credit, she'd kicked him prior to this. And
wow.
It was getting out of control. And 99.99% of the time, I'm like so nice to my patients. But with her, I grabbed her face and I'm like, we are talking about an epidural. and then, once we had that discussion, she was like, the only reason I didn't want one is because of the needle. And I'm like, oh, honey, you put yourself through so much just because you're afraid of a needle. And so education on both sides, I think, is important for breathing and relaxation and for interventions that might help you at the hospital so that they have choices when they're going through that. Understand both.
Absolutely.
And she got an epidural, and of course, it takes like 20 minutes to set up, right? And 20 minutes later, she was 10 centimeters because she was relaxed. And so if you're capable of doing that without one, it can go so well.
Absolutely.
But if you find yourself in that, rut that she was in,
right,
then an epidural is a great option. You shouldn't feel like a failure because you did that.
That's right.
I got so sad for women who thought that, like, they were less of a person because they got an epidural.
Right.
And all they could focus on after was, I remember taking care of one woman who wouldn't hold her baby. She was so angry with herself that she had gotten an epidural, but that's what she was taking away from the experience.
Oh, that's
it was
so
heartbreaking.
Sad. Yeah.
And so, I love that you say that these are skills that you can use in all circumstances because it basically sounds like stress and anxiety reduction.
Yes.
And if things don't go your way, then it's going to help you with that too.
Right. Well, and I think we all start wherever we are.
Mm-hmm.
And, if even that woman that was out of control, mm-hmm. she was able to attain a certain success level, mm-hmm. but wasn't able to go beyond that. I call those medically indicated epidurals. That's what I call them, because they're just not able to let go. And if that goes on for long enough, it can be dangerous for babies and moms too, mm-hmm. on and on for a long time. But if they're not able to get that pain, that fear, tension, pain syndrome going, because it sounds like she was locked into that.
Totally.
Then that's a very viable option. Usually they don't have the epidurals very long, like maybe an hour is mm-hmm. what I usually see. But get the epidural
because they've made it so far.
Oh yeah,
and then they just progress quickly. After.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, I failed." I'm like, "No, mm-mm. you labored the whole time.
Look at all you did."
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Yeah, I'm like, "You're amazing."
Yeah,
and then if they want to attempt again at the next time and really practice, they've gained that much, and then maybe the next time they can just go a little further. And I've worked with a lot of women who are experienced unmedicated birthers. They haven't taken a class before, but they're like, the part that's really hard for me is when the baby's actually crowning and being born. I'm really good into that point, and I can't get through that last part. Will you help me? And those are some of my favorite women to work with because, you just build on the skills and the experiences you have. And I've had a lot of success helping them with visualizations and being able to calm themselves, because it is such a powerful experience that I think sometimes we equate the intensity with bad. This intensity means it's bad. And our bodies go into that fight or flight resist place at that point. And so both of these women that I worked with just this last August it was so fun because they had such a great experience being able to let go and melt at that last point of birth. And they're like, that was incredible. So it's not like there's just one point of success for birthing this way. It's just kind of a spectrum, and it's an exciting thing to think I can do really well as I'm going to do this birth. And then if I choose to have another baby, I can see what I can do next time and then the next time. And what a great growth opportunity.
Yeah, that thought alone is kind of liberating.
Yeah. That I don't have to hit a certain point and then I'm successful. Yeah. It's all successful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone has any questions, you can ask those and we'll get to those in a couple of minutes. But I just wanted to give you a chance to share anything else that you think might be helpful for anyone out there who's thinking about hypnobirthing.
I think one of the most powerful ideas that I get to relate, and again, like I said, I did this class last night, so it was really fun to have that experience just the night before I'm talking to you. The idea that our bodies are basically releasing chemicals all the time. You know, we call them hormones or there's neurotransmitters, and it's kind of all technical and it doesn't really matter. But when you have thoughts in your mind, they communicate to the rest of your body through this chemical communication. And so the idea that if I'm able to work on my thinking and how my habits of thought, I'm able to impact how my body responds, whatever that is. And it can be even your level of nervousness when you're giving a presentation rather than locking down and forgetting everything and not being able to, you know this because you go, on camera all the time. But it's those thoughts, and you have to really be disciplined about them and choose what thoughts you're going to focus on. And I think a lot of the time we get a lot of negative input from whether, I know they're most likely well-meaning, but media outlets, movies, friends, people who have gone through a traumatic experience when they're birthing their baby, and they'll tell you these stories. Well, those thoughts go in and start to develop, a stress response in your body. And so I think it's important and liberating, as you were saying, to know that if I'm able to make choices in what I'm putting in my mind, I am making choices in the chemicals that are releasing in my body. And that's a lot of the tools we focus on when you're talking about your second birth and how you're visualizing yourself over that's a visualization. And so you are basically talking in your mind to your body and saying, you know how to do this, like you do as a nurse, because that's what you're doing. You're putting those ideas into a mom's mind as a nurse, and you were just doing it for yourself. That was absolutely fabulous to hear that story. And it is powerful, and it works because it's a literal chemical physiologic release you're releasing in. Because the opposite of that is if I'm terrified, I release those stress hormones that cause your body to go in fight or flight, where your arms and legs are getting most of the blood flow. It's not going to the baby in the uterus. And, then the baby seems like it's really in distress, and you're all tensed down and labor slowed down and all those things, which is kind of what you were talking about, that woman who was so out of control. But the opposite is also true if you are feeling really calm and empowered and peaceful, that blood does flow to the baby and to the uterus, and those muscles are more relaxed and they are able to function correctly because they have oxygen and those kinds of things. I think that's probably the most empowering thing I can share, is that what we think does matter, and that we do have control over what we think. Yes, it might take practice to change some of those habits, but we have power over that.
Yeah. And so I think the key is remembering it starts with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And embracing the changes that happen when you were talking about like chemicals and hormones, that made me think about shaking during labor. Like most everyone would start shaking violently at some point. It's usually during transition or right after delivery. And all the dads and her mom, if they were in the room, were like, "Get her a blanket. She's freezing cold." And it was that I would just love the opportunity to teach them that was actually a release of adrenaline from her body to help her through this experience. Just think of to
wake the baby up.
Exactly.
Hey, baby.
You're getting in a car accident and you sit there and shake because that adrenaline kicked in, and that's what's happening during birth too, to help you through the process. And so instead of being afraid of those things, you're welcoming it. You're like, "Oh, good. I know this is what is happening now." Sounds like those are the types of things that you talk to people about during hypnobirthing, the physiology of birth, to help them know what's what so that they
and
can
what's
expect
normal.
it and embrace
it's okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, because usually when we experience pain, we're afraid because we're wondering, what does it mean, and am I going to be okay?
Right.
And then there's the dealing with it portion. But you're able to deal with it better if you know you're going to be okay and it's normal.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that this is really just a natural process.
Yes.
It's a physiologic process. It's not something that's broken.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be something you've gone through before, so it can be new, but it's okay that these things are okay.
Yeah. It's like the difference of like a preterm patient coming in contracting versus a full-term patient. I often thought of that difference because when you're preterm, a lot of women would say, well, I can handle the pain. I'm just afraid that I'm going to have my baby early. And that's driving the pain that they're feeling. It's making it even worse because they know that it's probably not okay at that point. But when you're full term and you can welcome it, it's like, bring it on.
That's right. You're so ready.
Yeah. That's one of the beauties of pregnancy, right? I think you get so uncomfortable at the end because you can't imagine the thought of doing what it takes to get him out unless you are that uncomfortable.
That's right. Just got to free this child. Yeah. I'm going to free this baby. It's bursting. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Referring to the shaking, I just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting experience. Like I said, I learned hypnobirthing for the birth of my last baby. But I had enough births personally that, because I was taught about transition, which is what you're referring to, and then possibly afterwards as a part of my first birth education I had. I think it was a Lamaze class that I took in a hospital. And so I experienced it for the first few labors I went through. And then after a while, it went away. And I remember not noticing that it went away until after the baby was born. And then as I was kind of going through the experience and thinking about it, I'm like, hey, I didn't have I think we called them Elvis legs or something funny like that. I didn't have that this time. And I'm like, why didn't that happen? And I didn't really find the answer until I took hypnobirthing. Because I'm like, what, my body just got lazy or something? Or it's taken a shortcut? And what I found out is that the experience was familiar enough to me that I resisted it so little that I didn't end up having to have that, because that adrenaline release is a natural part of the physiology, like the chemistry of birth. But the way my body responded to it changed.
It didn't need it. Yeah.
Which was interesting.
That is interesting.
Well, I think it probably did need it still, because it still gives you that like rev up, but I didn't feel overwhelmed by it. And so that's kind of an interesting perspective that I have to be able to share. It's okay, if this is your first time through an unmedicated birth, if you have some of these responses, it's your first time your body's gone through this, you're still kind of getting adapted to this experience, and it's okay to have some of these stronger responses. If you go through it again, it might not be that way, but it's actually not a requirement to have those. So occasionally I'll get women that, I don't know what the difference is. Their minds are really strong or something. They're able to really visualize deeply, and they're able to even release some of that expectation. Because I think part of what we experience is our expectation of what we are going to experience, what people have told us it needs to look like. And so if you kind of give yourself permission to just release the expectation ahead of time, you don't know. Your baby can come really rapidly, or, first-time moms can have really short labors. I've been to those. I know the expectation is it's not going to happen, and sometimes it doesn't, but it could. And it's not like there's just a formula that everybody has to necessarily go through. And I think that's an empowering idea, where each an individual person, each baby is a little bit of a different experience, and to just give ourselves permission to go through what this experience is going to be and honor that and believe in our bodies and respond intelligently to those experiences rather than just being afraid and overwhelmed by all of them.
I love what you said. Each one could be different. Like you could have 10 children. Each pregnancy, labor, delivery could be entirely different.
Right.
Yeah. So back to our previous conversation about if you had a bad experience in the past, it doesn't mean you have to have a bad experience and be afraid of it in the future.
Especially if you're able to release that idea, because the body does learn, kind of goes down a groove that it went down before. Sometimes you have to do something kind of big to change it and say, no, we're going to actually make a different decision. But that's what our conscious mind, which is sort of the adult in us. Subconscious mind is a little more of a childlike mind that just sort of accepts. The adult mind makes the decisions and says, this is what we're going to do this time. Kind of disciplines you. We are going to practice these techniques. We are going to do this over and over. We are going to make sure we relax. Like when you took that mom's face between your hands, you were talking to the adult part of her and said, okay. You were helping her pull out of that freak out child kind of fit throwing place and saying, you can do this. Come on, take control. So it's very much a conscious, subconscious conversation that's going on, I think, within us all the time, but especially when you're in labor, it's important that you have those parts of your mind working together.
Do you feel like it's easier to tap into that when you're going through the hypnosis that we refer to when it applies to hypnobirthing? Because you're just already in a deeper level of...
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the benefits, too, is developing a relationship. I think a lot of people don't even understand that they have a subconscious mind or what it is. I like to call it the creative mind. Mm-hmm. Like when you're doing your visualization, totally subconscious mind creating it. And it's so powerful. Athletes use this all the time, visualizations. You know, I had a guy tell me the story last night that he read this article that a basketball team, they did a study. They had 2 basketball teams. One sat in a dark room and visualized free throws. The other ones went and did free throws for the same amount of time.
Oh,
and they did
experiment.
this for a few sessions. And then they had them go and actually do free throws. And the group that just visualized free throws, because when you visualize them, everyone goes in,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And, but they were more successful. They had a better percentage. And they're like, that is crazy. How did that work?
I love that analogy, because you can sit there and you can psych yourself out if you're missing all the free throws and you're not going to perform well, because it's a totally mental thing. In sports, you see that all the time. They psych themselves out.
Right. And it's physiological.
Yeah.
I mean, when you psych, your physiology changes, the tension in your muscles. So it really does help to get your mind on board and to understand the power of it. So hypnobirthing helps you to kind of get that relationship with the subconscious mind and work with it. And I introduce it. This is your subconscious mind. Welcome. Because that's what you do when you go through a hypnosis script, is you open the conscious mind, gives permission for the subconscious mind to open up and receive information.
And just like anything, if you're meeting someone for the first time, you may not be as likely to open
That's
up.
right.
So you need a chance to be introduced to your subconscious mind.
That's right. Well,
to accept them in.
Yeah, exactly.
Accept it in.
Yeah. Another example that I give as a way, and it would be something that perhaps some people watching could try, even if you're not pregnant or anything, it's deciding when you want to wake up in the morning. And you really do have to want to wake up or it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But let's say I want to wake up at 7 a.m. And because I did this even before I heard about hypnobirthing, but I didn't understand what I was really working with. And because I didn't like alarms because they made me feel kind of shaky, because it would...
You wake up and you're like...
Yeah, I feel alarmed when my alarm goes off.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm just going to set my alarm for like 5 after 7. That won't make me late, but I'm going to just decide I'm going to wake up at 7. And the thing that really surprised me is when I would wake up, I'd look at the clock and it was just 7, like 7:00. And I'm like, how did I do that?
Yeah.
And I still can't explain exactly how I did it, but there's some part of us that is so aware and powerful, that powerful part of the mind that knew that it was 7 and would wake me up. And I use that all the time now. Because I don't like alarms. I still don't like alarms. But
I'm going to try that tomorrow.
It is really exciting. And so, but it took a little trust, because at first, I'm like, no, I'm going to set my alarm for 7:05. But anyway, if you can kind of get in alignment where your conscious mind trusts your subconscious mind and they can work together, it's a very powerful combination.
I love that. Such great information for pregnancy, labor, delivery, and life.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's been a pleasure having you with us today. I've learned a lot. I'm sure you guys have all learned a lot too. Is there a place where people can go to learn more about you and about hypnobirthing?
We have a little bit on McCady.org. It's a little blurb there. But if you want to go to hypnobirthing.com, that's probably the best. They have a lot of information. And
people can find you at McCady Hospital, right?
Yes.
That's where you teach.
And I do, actually. Anybody that's really interested, I'm always open to answer questions or send them information. I love talking about this, obviously.
Yeah, I can tell you're very passionate about it, and it's ingrained in you. It's a part of who you are, and that's what makes you so great to talk to everyone else about it.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And of course, if you guys have questions for me, you know where to find me on Facebook. Have a great day, everyone.